In the vast, terrifying silence of the South Pacific, thousands of miles from the nearest continent, a speck of land rises from the abyss. This is Rapa Nui, the most isolated inhabited island on Earth. For centuries, it has guarded a secret that defies logic, a graveyard of giants that stare eternally inland. They are the Moai, monolithic sentinels carved from volcanic tuff, weighing up to 80 tons. Their hollow eyes once held coral irises that watched over a thriving civilization. But when the first Europeans arrived, the silence was deafening. The people were few, the trees were gone, and the giants had fallen silent. The central question haunts archaeologists and engineers alike. How? How did a Stone Age society, without wheels, without draft animals, and with no metal tools, carve these behemoths? And more impossibly, how did they move them miles across rugged, uneven terrain to their final resting places along the coast? It is a puzzle wrapped in an ecological mystery. The island today is a shadow of its former self. But beneath the soil, the answers lie waiting. To understand the death of the giants, we must first understand their birth. We must travel back to a time when Rapa Nui was not a barren rock, but a paradise. Easter Sunday, 1722, Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen spots the island through his spyglass. He expects a deserted sandbank but finds a civilization disconnected from the rest of humanity for a millennium. What he describes in his logbook is a scene of bewilderment, natives praying to massive idols that towered over their fragile huts. Roggeveen noted that the islanders were skilled, yet their resources were pitiable. They possessed no large timber to build ships or levers. The paradox was immediate. If they had no wood, how did they transport statues standing 30 feet tall? The mystery of the walking giants began the moment the Western world set foot on the shore. For decades following, the island was visited by Cook, La Perouse, and others. Each visit revealed a darker turn. The statues began to fall. The society was unraveling, but the stone faces remained, stoic witnesses to a history that was slowly being forgotten, erased by disease, slave raids, and internal conflict. To solve the riddle, we must look at the stone itself. Rano Raraku, the womb of the giants. This volcanic crater is the quarry where 95% of the Moai were carved. Walking through it today is like entering a workshop where the workers have just called a lunch break but never returned. Here lie nearly 400 unfinished statues. Some are merely outlined in the rock face, others are fully formed, waiting for a transport that never came. The largest, El Gigante, would have stood 70 feet tall and weighed as much as 2 Boeing 737s. The ambition here borders on madness. The tools found in the quarry tell a story of immense patience. Toki, handheld chisels made of harder basalt, were used to chip away the volcanic tuff. Thousands of these tools litter the ground. It is estimated that a single statue took a team of 6 men over a year to carve. But why? What compelled this isolated group of Polynesians to dedicate their lives to stone? The answer lies in mana, the spiritual power of the ancestors. The Moai were not gods, they were vessels. By erecting them on Ahu platforms, the Rapa Nui believed the statues would project protection over their villages. The statues always faced inland, watching the people, never looking out to sea. This detail is crucial. It signifies an inward-looking society, obsessed with lineage and internal hierarchy. But as the statues grew larger, so did the competition between clans. The stone consumption became an arms race of prestige. Now, we face the engineering miracle. Once carved, the statue had to be severed from the bedrock. They carved a slender keel along the back, then snapped it. The statue would slide down the slope into a pit, standing upright for the final detailing of the back and the carving of the eye sockets. This is where the paro, the great transport, begins. Some statues had to travel up to 11 miles. The terrain is not flat, it is undulating, rocky, and treacherous. For decades, archaeologists believed they used wooden rollers, a theory that implies the destruction of the island's palm forests. The roller theory suggests hundreds of men pulling a sled over log rails. While plausible, experiments have shown this method is incredibly resource-heavy. It requires massive amounts of timber and rope, and if the trees were disappearing, How could they sustain this method for centuries? Thor Heyerdahl, the famous adventurer, tested this in the 1950s. It worked, but it was brutal. Then, in the 1980s, American archaeologist Pavel tried a different approach. He didn't drag the statue, he made it walk. This aligned with the oral history of the Rapa Nui elders. The legends say the statues walked to their places. Howard by Mana, could this be a metaphor for a specific engineering technique? Archaeologists Terry Hunt and Carl Leipo proposed the rock and roll method. By using 3 teams with ropes, they could tilt the statue and swivel it forward. This walking theory changes everything. It requires far fewer people and almost no wood. It explains the shape of the Moai roads, which are concave. It also explains why abandoned statues are found face down on uphill slopes and face up on downhill slopes, evidence of toppling during transport. The belly of the Moai played a key role. Their center of gravity was engineered precisely to allow this rocking motion. The D-shaped base was curved not for aesthetics, but for kinetics. These were not just sculptures, they were machines designed to move. The brilliance of Rapa Nui engineering is undeniable. But if the transport didn't require destroying the forest, what happened to the trees? Pollen analysis reveals that Rapa Nui was once covered in millions of giant palm trees. Today, it is a grassland. The collapse of the ecosystem is the second great mystery of the island. Jared Diamond famously termed this ecocide, a society that foolishly cut down the last tree to build statues. Sealing their doom, it's a cautionary tale of human greed. However, recent evidence points to a different culprit, a stowaway that arrived with the first canoes, the Polynesian rat. These rats had no natural predators. They multiplied into the millions. They didn't eat the trees, but they ate the seeds. Without new seeds sprouting, the old forest slowly died of old age. The humans cleared land for farming, yes, but the rats prevented the forest from recovering. As the forest vanished, the soil eroded, farming became harder, the bounty of the land decreased. Tension rose. The statue-building era, which had lasted for centuries, came to an abrupt, violent halt. The tools were dropped in the quarry, never to be picked up again. This period is known as the Kari Moai, the toppling of the statues. It wasn't an invasion, it was a civil unraveling. Clans turned against each other. To insult an enemy, you didn't just attack them, you broke the spine of their ancestors. You pushed their Moai face down into the dirt. By the time Europeans arrived in the 18th century, many statues were already down. By 1838, the last standing Moai had been toppled. The eyes, made of white coral and red scoria, were shattered, blinding the ancestors. The mana was considered lost. The old order had fallen. But the Rapa Nui did not vanish. They adapted. From the ashes of the ancestor cult rose the Tangata Manu, the Birdman cult. This was a new solution to violence. Instead of war, leadership would be decided by a perilous competition held at the ceremonial village of Orongo. Orongo hangs precariously on the rim of the Rano Raraku crater, overlooking the shark-infested waters. Each year, representatives from rival clans would gather here. They had to climb down the 1,000-foot cliff, swim to a tiny islet called Motu Nui, and wait for the migration of the sooty tern. The goal was to secure the first egg laid by the birds. The man who returned with the egg unbroken would win not just for himself, but for his chief. His chief would become the Birdman, the sacred ruler of the island for 1 year. It was a meritocracy of physical prowess. This transition from massive stone construction to the Birdman ritual marks a profound psychological shift. They moved from worshipping static, eternal ancestors to worshipping the dynamic, recurring cycles of nature. The bird represented freedom, flight, and the return of life, something the stone giants could no longer promise. Yet, the arrival of the outside world brought threats no ritual could stop. In the 1860s, Peruvian slave raiders abducted a third of the population, including the scribes who knew how to read the Rongorongo tablets, the island's unique script. The knowledge of their written language died with them. Rongorongo remains one of the few undeciphered scripts in the world. It looks like hieroglyphs, carved onto driftwood with sharp teeth. If we could read it, perhaps the mystery of the Moai would be solved instantly. Instead, the tablets remain silent, guarding their secrets like the statues themselves. By 1877, only 111 Rapa Nui natives remained. A civilization that once numbered in the thousands was on the brink of extinction. Yet, against all odds, they survived. The resilience of the Rapa Nui people is as impressive as the statues they built. They held onto their identity. Today, the Moai are being restored. In the 1990s, a Japanese crane company helped re-erect the 15 Moai at Ahu Tongariki, the largest platform on the island. Seeing them stand again against the sunrise is a testament to global cooperation and the enduring spirit of the island. But a new threat looms. Climate change and rising sea levels are eroding the coastlines where the platforms stand. The statues, having survived tribal wars and colonial collapse, now face the ocean's wrath. Conservationists are racing against time to stabilize the cliffs and document the heritage. As we walk among the giants of Rano Raraku, we feel a strange connection. They are mirrors of ourselves. They represent our greatest ambitions and our deepest fragilities. They ask us, what legacy will we leave behind? Will our monuments stand the test of time, or will they too fall silent? The story of Easter Island is not just a mystery of the past, it is a message for the future. It teaches us about the limits of resources, the consequences of isolation, and the necessity of adaptation. The Moai didn't move themselves. They were moved by faith and stopped by reality. Let us return to the quarry. The deeper we dig, the more we find. Archaeologists have discovered that the Moai heads we see are actually full bodies buried by centuries of sediment. These bodies are covered in petroglyphs, carvings that have been protected from the elements by the dirt. These hidden carvings depict canoes, Polynesian symbols, and the Ring of Fire. They suggest that the statue builders were not just land-bound farmers, but proud navigators who remembered their origins. The connection to the sea was never lost, even if they stopped building boats. The navigation skills required to find Rapa Nui in the first place are mind-boggling. Polynesians used the stars, the swell of the ocean, and the behavior of birds to find this needle in a haystack. It was likely a one-way trip, a voyage of no return led by the legendary king Hodu Matua. Legend says Hodu Matua landed at Anakina Beach, the only sandy beach on the rocky island. Here, the first settlement was founded. The oldest statues found here differ in style. They are more human, less stylized. This shows an evolution of art over hundreds of years. The evolution of the Moai reflects the evolution of the society. As the population grew, so did the need to assert dominance. The statues became taller, thinner, and more abstract. The red pukau, the top knots made of red scoria, were added later, adding another layer of engineering difficulty. These red top knots weigh up to 12 tons. They had to be quarried from a different volcano, Puna Pau, and transported separately. Then, they had to be lifted onto the head of a statue standing 30 feet high. How? Ramps, levers. The engineering debate continues. The sheer effort required suggests a society with a surplus of food. You cannot build monuments if you are starving. This implies that for a long time, Rapa Nui was a land of plenty. They farmed sweet potatoes, chickens, and fished the coastal waters. The surplus allowed for the specialization of labor. But isolation is a double-edged sword. With no neighbors to trade with, they were a closed system. When the resources began to strain, there was no safety net. The collapse was likely a slow grind, a gradual decline in quality of life rather than a Hollywood-style apocalypse. Interestingly, recent studies of obsidian tools suggest they were not primarily weapons of war, but agricultural tools. This challenges the narrative of a violent civil war. Perhaps the toppling of the Moai was a ritual closure, a rejection of the old ways rather than an act of chaotic rage. If the toppling was ritualistic, it suggests a controlled cultural revolution. The people realized the ancestors were not bringing rain or crops. The mana had failed, so they decommissioned the machines. They put the giants to sleep to try a new path. This perspective humanizes them. They were not mindless destroyers. They were rational people facing an ecological crisis. They pivoted. They innovated. They created the Birdman cult to manage resources and leadership without bloodshed. It was a brilliant socio-political adaptation. However, the mystery of the alien theories persists in pop culture. Why? Because we underestimate the ingenuity of ancient people. We assume that because they didn't have iPhones, they couldn't be smart. The Moai are proof that human determination can move mountains, literally. Let's look at the eyes again. In 1978, during restoration, a fragment of white coral was found in the sand. It fit perfectly into the eye socket. When the eye was placed back in, the statue transformed. It became alive. It wasn't just a rock anymore, it was a person. The restoration of the eyes changed our understanding. These weren't blind monoliths. They were active participants in the village life. The Ahu platforms were usually located between the village and the ocean. The statues stood with their backs to the sea, embracing the living. There are over 900 Moai on the island. Their average height is 13 feet, but many are double that. The logistics of moving 900 colossal objects across a small island is a feat that rivals the construction of the pyramids of Giza. Relative to the population size, the oral traditions speak of mana not just as magic, but as authority and effectiveness. A chief with high mana could command nature and people. The statues were the physical embodiment of this mana. To build bigger was to prove you had more mana. But mana is fragile. When the Europeans arrived with diseases like smallpox, the mana failed to protect the people. The population crashed. The faith was shattered. The statues became reminders of a power that had abandoned them. This spiritual crisis accelerated the collapse. We must also consider the subsurface freshwater. Recent research by Lipo and Hunt suggests that the Moai platforms were situated near sources of fresh groundwater. On an island with no permanent rivers, fresh water is life. The statues marked the water. This theory suggests the Moai were guardians of resources. Here is water, here is life, here are the ancestors who provide it. It adds a practical, utilitarian function to the spiritual monuments. They were signposts for survival in a harsh environment. As we enter the final phase of our journey, we look at the legacy of the Moai Kavakava, small wooden figures of starving men with ribs showing. Carved during the times of famine, they are the dark opposite of the robust stone giants. They represent the reality of hunger. These contrasts define Easter Island: giant stone versus small wood, feast versus famine, ancestors versus birdman. It is a place of extremes. The history of Rapa Nui is a pendulum swinging between creation and destruction, abundance and scarcity. The mystery of who moved the giants has been largely solved by science. It was the people themselves, using physics and cooperation. But the deeper mystery remains. What were they thinking as they placed the last stone? Did they know the end was coming? In the silence of the Rano Raraku quarry, you can almost hear the whispers of the past. The wind whistles through the grass. The unblinking eyes of the unfinished statues seem to wait for a command that will never come. Wake up, move, protect us. Easter Island is a laboratory for the planet. It shows us what happens when a society outgrows its environment. It is a microcosm of Earth. We, too, are isolated in space. We, too, have limited resources. The Moai are a warning from the past. Yet, it is also a story of hope. The Rapa Nui culture is experiencing a renaissance. The language is being taught in schools. The Tapati Festival celebrates the ancient sports and arts. The descendants of the giant builders are reclaiming their narrative. The Moai have become ambassadors of this resilience. Millions of tourists visit them, bringing revenue but also challenges. Balancing tourism with preservation is the modern struggle. The giants now support the economy, serving their people in a new way. Scientists continue to study the island. New technologies like lidar and 3D scanning are revealing road networks and settlements hidden by vegetation. The Book of Rapa Nui is far from closed. Every year adds a new page to the mystery. We must remember that for the Rapa Nui, these are not just archaeological sites. They are family members. They are tupuna, grandfathers. You treat them with respect. You do not touch them. You do not walk on the Ahu. This sacredness is palpable. As the sun sets over the island, the shadows of the Moai stretch long across the grass. They point towards the villages, towards the people who survived. They stand as silent sentinels of a history that is both tragic and triumphant. So, who moved the giants? It wasn't aliens, it wasn't magic, it was human ingenuity, driven by deep spiritual belief. It was the collective effort of a people who believed that stone could live. And in a way, they were right. The Moai live on. They live in the photos of travelers, in the pride of the Rapa Nui, and in the imagination of the world. They have achieved the immortality their builders sought. They have defeated time. As night falls, the Milky Way rises above the Pacific. The stars that guided Hotu Matua here still shine. Under their light, the Moai keep their watch. The mystery is not fully solved, and perhaps it never should be. Some secrets belong to the island. Some answers are buried too deep to find. But the question, who moved the giants, leads us to a better understanding of ourselves. It reminds us of what we are capable of building, and what we are capable of losing. Rapa Nui, the navel of the world, a speck in the ocean with a colossal story. The giants are still there, waiting for you to listen to their silence. Who moved them? We did, together.